Welcome back to the pod, talking real estate at Lakeland Real Estate NEOK over here in Pryor, Oklahoma. I'm your special guest today, Larry Berry, the managing broker here. Got Joe Jolley with me. Joe's been gracious enough to come in and sit down with me and chat up about home inspections in the process of buying and selling houses. So thank you for coming, Joe. Appreciate you.
Well, thanks for the invite. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you and I have a history. Ever since I've been in real estate, you've been my inspector for the most part, and so I appreciate you and thank you for that. Done some of my personal kids' houses, and that's always good.
Thank you for the confidence.
So, yep, absolutely. So, Joe, I'm going to let you start with telling us about yourself, maybe how you got started. I know you were, I won't take all the glory, but you were a former firefighter, and so just kind of go back through the history of how you got started in home inspections.
Okay, I can do that. Yes, I retired from the Tulsa Fire Department, and once I retired, I was, didn't want to sit still. I needed something else to do. But I still wanted something that gave me the same pleasure and good feeling of helping people. So I was able to get into the inspection world, and I kind of find out I do get a good feeling because I am able to help protect people just in a different way by protecting them from, revealing some things about a house that they may not have known about. Or reassuring them that yes, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay.
What's the process of becoming a home inspector? What's that look like?
There's various classes that you can take. There's several online classes, and there's actually a class that Tulsa Tech has, and I'm actually an adjunct teacher for Tulsa Tech. I'll be teaching the licensing class. Tulsa Tech has an on-site licensing class. We are governed by the Oklahoma Construction Industries Board. They require 90 hours of classroom instruction, and once you take that class, then you're able to take the national, some people refer to national state test. It's all the same test to become, to get your license. Once you get your license, or once you get insured, you get your license, and by golly, you're a home inspector.
Yeah. So whenever you go through that and you get completed and you're now a home inspector, do you guys have CE classes, things like that? I mean, as real estate, we have to continuously educate ourselves and go to new policies, procedures, things that come out. Do you guys have that same thing
exactly
as well?
Like real estate agents, we have to renew our home inspectors we have to renew our license yearly, and with that comes 8 hours of continuing ed. I have to turn in 8 hours of continuing education to renew my license.
So your training at the Tulsa Tech will probably qualify for some of that, or?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
We work real closely with the Construction Industries Board as far as approving the classes that we teach and making sure that the classes that are taught there will be accepted as continuing ed hours.
So cheap plug, if they want to become a home inspector, they just got to let you train them, right?
That is right. I love it. I love sharing what I've learned with other people. Had some people help me get started, so I want to pass that on and help people get into the business that I enjoy.
So, as a new realtor years ago when I first got into business, I wasn't really sure how the preferred process was for hiring a home inspector, whether the home inspector wanted the realtor to contact them and do all of that, or if they wanted the home buyer to contact them. What's your preference, or is there a preferred way? Would you rather the home buyer contact you, set up the showing or the inspection, or would you rather the real estate person handle that?
Really, either way. I mean, there's pros and cons either way. Sometimes the real estate agent will contact me because a lot of home buyers they're like clueless. They don't know a home inspector. Yeah. We don't do a whole lot of just public advertising. Most of our advertising is with the real estate agent. So a lot of home buyers, they have no clue who to call. So they rely on the ability of the realtor to provide a good home inspector. Yeah. But then again, that works perfectly. And sometimes the home buyer will contact me. The agent will say, "Hey, why don't you call this guy or these these 2 or 3 guys and talk to them. So really, for me, it's either way.
So tell me an instance that you've went to a home inspection and it's been an ordeal or something unexpected. I've heard horror stories, and I say horror stories. I've heard they're kind of funny for me because I wasn't involved. But where a home inspector does an inspection on a house and it wasn't even the right house or got halfway through. I don't know if you've had any instances like that or not. But
it's funny you say that. I actually did one for Kevin here at Lakeland. We showed up and I don't know how we got our wires crossed. I just can't remember. But I did the inspection of the full home inspection, and it should have been a clue because we weren't able to get into the door, the lock. I can't remember exactly what happened. We had trouble getting into the lock, but I went ahead and did the full inspection, and I walked out the door. We were done, and Kevin said, "Joe, it's the house down the street." So whoever that was, they got a free home inspection. So we went down the street and did the other inspection, but we had a good laugh. It was, luckily our time and schedule allowed us to just move down the street.
So this was just a different house that was listed on the market, and you pulled up there, or was this somebody that was living there? And you walk in, there's like.
No,
they just went to work.
Both houses were vacant.
Okay.
I can't remember the details, but Kevin may be able to know remember the details.
Oh, that's too funny.
It was.
I'm sure you found critters under houses, right? I mean, you've encountered some of that.
Yes, I have ran across. It's actually several instances, and they all were. I don't know, something about Lakeland people. I don't know what the deal is. I was inspecting a house with Stephanie, and there's a skunk under the house.
Oh, gosh.
I could smell it, and the termite guy said, "Yeah, there's one in this corner back here." And I thought he was just joking, and so he said, "No, I'm serious." So I did not go in there to find out, but I just there was a skunk under there, and another one. I believe it was Cookie. A lake house that was, I think it was bank owned, and I opened the crawl space and there was a snake looking at me, and he and I looked at each other and kind of nodded at each other, and I went on about my business. So
yeah, for sure. So the process, you show up to a house, what's your kind of, I'm sure you have like a process that you like to step through and kind of go into a little bit maybe with me as to what that entails, what you're looking for at each process, things like that.
I've developed a system, my own personal system, that how I have to do it. It just keeps everything the same and keeps me on focus and on track. The very first thing I do, of course, is take a picture, and then I check the water meter for water flow in case there's a leak in the line. Then I inspect the roof. That's the very first thing I do is I inspect the roof, just nothing but the roof and all that's entailed with that. And then after the roof's inspected, I go counterclockwise. I go to the right around the house, inspect all the exterior, and then once we go inside, I do the same thing. I go.
So, not to interrupt you, but yes. You're inspecting the roof. You're looking for shingles, hail damage, missing shingles. You're looking for soft spots, maybe areas around chimneys, fascia, soffit, things like that. Is that all entailed with the roof?
Exactly. Okay. Roof damage, hail damage. I can see missing granules. Sometimes I can actually see down into the fiberglass strands. That means some really aged, really heavy damaged shingles, flashings that protect water intrusion, vent flashings, make sure they're secured and not allowing water intrusion.
So I had an investment property that had some hail damage from the tornadoes and stuff that went through Salina here recently, and that we put a high impact, I think it's class 4.
Yes, that's the word
shingle.
I was looking for.
And these first ones I put on, I didn't even put them on my personal house. But the roofer guy, Dawson Roofing here in Pryor, recommended those, and it was only a few $100s. And actually, your insurance company on some of them will actually lower your premiums if you have a high impact class 4
You
shingles.
can actually look at those class 4 and tell you can see the difference.
The visibility difference. So,
then of course your metal roof, they'll outlast all of us, so.
Yeah. So metal roofs, I don't have any on any of my stuff. I'm always hesitant because of like the rubber washers and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're supposedly you change them out. I don't even really know. Every so often they dry rot potentially, so I kind of stayed away from them personally. But I hear they're the long term. I mean, that's kind of like one and done type deal.
Yes.
What about spray foam? Well, I'm thinking, that kind of took me there because I'm thinking, okay, if there is a leak on a roof, sometimes you don't know it. And I've had people tell me, well, when you spray foam a house, if the rafters are all spray foam, then decking, you don't know it till it's a big problem. Have you ran into anything with spray foam?
I think maybe once or twice where there's an issue, it developed a leak, probably around one of the boots, one of the vents, one of the flashings or something, and it did damage. And of course, it goes undetected for quite a while, so there will be substantial damage to the roof decking because of the extended discovery time.
I had someone tell me the other day, closed sale, you won't see the leak because it's a closed sale, and it will actually like potentially run way down before the water actually comes out from under the roof or whatever it is.
Yes.
But the open sale, I guess the water may actually go down through it like a sponge and drip sooner, and you may find it sooner, is what I was told. So it was a difference in a closed and an open as far as leaks go. So that was something I hadn't really thought much about. But
spray foam has its good points and bad points.
Yeah. I did my house with spray foam. Utility bill, great.
Yes.
I don't know 20 years from now if somebody is going to be doing a remodel on it, or if I'm going to be doing something on it and hating myself because I did it, and now I'm having to, because it's a whole lot easier to remove a bat of insulation and replace a stud or put in a wire or whatever than it is to go through that foam. But man, from a utility bill, I love my utility bill with because mine's fully enclosed, walls, ceiling, everything. So my attic probably runs about 3 to 5 degrees warmer or colder than the rest of my house on average.
They insulate very well, very well.
Yeah. So, all right. So you get off the roof. You've checked that. You've looked at the fascia, guttering, things like that. And then you inspect the exterior. That you're looking for vinyl siding. If it has weed eater notches in it, you probably see that a lot, especially on like a double wide with skirting.
Yes.
Lawnmowers throwing rocks into the vinyl siding.
Yes.
Rotting on board and batten. I know that there's kind of some areas there where water will be retained on some of that siding. So that's kind of what you're looking for from the outside. Windows.
All of the outside, which includes the siding and trim and the exterior plumbing. Okay. And also that includes, the exterior view of the windows, air conditioning units, just whatever I see.
So you're breaking it out into roof, outside, inside, not necessarily I'm going to inspect the AC inside and outside. I'm going to inspect the plumbing inside and outside. You're kind of saying, look, I'm going to inspect AC and plumbing while I'm out here.
Correct, okay. Yes. I'll do the roof and then start on the outside and whatever I run into while I'm making that.
So the exterior no matter what. And then when you go inside, you're also going to do plumbing and stuff on the inside. Okay.
Room by room, yes.
Okay. So all right, so you're done with the outside, you go inside. What's your process there? What's your system?
I'll usually go turn start the dishwasher, put it on a short cycle, make sure it cycles properly. I'll do that first so that it can be operating while I'm doing the inspection. And I'll also go, depending on what time of year it is, turn the air conditioner thermostat down or turn the heater thermostat up. Let those run for a while and see what temperatures I come up with. And the same as outside. Excuse me. The same as outside. I start a counterclockwise, going room by room, inspecting each room.
Why counterclockwise?
It
just a backwards like kind of guy.
Well, it goes
my ADD or ADHD would cause me to go clockwise.
Well, I just started rather than counterclockwise. I just go to the right. So, and just going to the right just happens to be counterclockwise. No specific reason. It's just what I've been doing, and I don't do change very well. So.
Yeah, well, most people don't. So if counterclockwise is kitchen, then the bathroom, then the bedroom, then another bathroom, that's just how you inspect it. You just go through that. So you've inspected a room. bedrooms, pretty simple. Probably checking the inside of windows. You raise windows.
I raise every window that I can, every window that's accessible. We don't move furniture, personal belongings. It's just because of the high liability that we have, home inspectors have.
Yeah.
I move something, a box of something. Well, it may have had great grandma's china that she brought over from the motherland.
Yeah.
And if it gets broken, well, no matter who did it, well, it ends up on the.
Or you slide a piece of furniture and it scrapes the floor,
exactly,
and it had already been there. But it wasn't there. You did that.
Yes.
So I understand.
Yeah, windows, the walls, electrical receptacles, just everything that would come under the guidelines of a home inspection in that particular room. The doors, if they latch, sometimes a house will move, the doors won't latch properly.
Yeah.
The ceilings, just for structural issues. In the closets, make sure just everything's there again. Ceiling, walls, everything's.
You're looking for the stuff that the realtor and the potential buyer weren't looking for, because when we go into a house, most generally, everybody is kind of told by a friend, a family member, look for cracks. Look for cracks. And I'm like, you're going to see cracks if there's cracks. We're kind of looking for some other stuff here than just cracks. But then look at the roof. Always, you got to check that roof. That thing's expensive. And
exactly.
So those are the two things I always chuckle, because whenever I meet a first-time home buyer, and sometimes even seasoned, there's a crack over here. And I'm like, well, there's a couple of different kinds of cracks. There's the tape line, which you and I can look at, and you're going, that's a straight line right down the seam of some sheetrock. Not as big an issue. It's cosmetic, versus a crack that may potentially run across an angle off of a window or a door header that says, oh, there may be some settling involved here. So
you're exactly right. Yes, cracking is one thing that we look for. Now, everything I do is through the eyes of a home inspector. I'm not a licensed electrician. I'm not a licensed plumber. I'm not a licensed HVAC. I'm not a structural engineer. Everything I do is through the eyes of a home inspector. So there are things that I know to look for as far as structural issues. Cracking is one of them. And like you said, people see a straight line crack, and I tell them that piece of tape is probably the weakest part of this house from one end to the other. And something has to give when there's some movement. Your house is going to move. You're in Northeast Oklahoma. Your house is going to move, and if that tape is broken, that's just something had to give. But yes, the diagonal cracks across the windows, or even below the windows, doors, ceiling cracks, broken tile, doors that don't shut properly. There's just a number of things that we look for as far as even exterior broken brick and things.
Yeah, and at that point, you're kind of looking for the severity of what is this crack. Like we said, houses move. That goes all the way back from the very beginning when they poured the footing. Right. Potentially if the footing isn't deep enough or wide enough, or depending on the soil the footing was in. How long ago it was, in the 1940s and 50s, they were throwing rocks and pieces of metal to take up space in those footings, and so you got to kind of look to see how that was. I will say, though, years ago the concrete was a lot harder than it is nowadays, too. So I'm not afraid of those 1950s and 60s footings. They're a little better.
I tell people when people start asking about, I saw a little crack on in that back bedroom, and how I'd work through that and describe that to the home buyer is I've kind of developed my own little mathematical equation. I look for the number of different cracks, different issues, doors, cracks, broken tile. If I walk down the hall, I got to kind of walk with a limp because it's leaning. I kind of add all those up and kind of factor in the severity, like as you said, the severity of them, and then I compare it to the age of the house. If I see one little crack in a closet door, just a very hairline crack, and the house is a 1960 house built upon a stem wall foundation, I'm not too concerned about it. Yeah. But if I see cracks, all over, interior, exterior, just a lot of issues, I just kind of add them all up, factor in the severity. And I feel like that's where
experience factors in. I framed houses with an uncle that was a builder, and then his son, which my cousin, was a framer, and I worked for him and learned a lot of the industry and what's behind those walls. How did it get from point A to point B? And so I think that experience helps us when we walk in and we see cracks and we see different things. You're like, okay, that's not what you think it is, or hey, that's a problem. You may not see it, but I'm seeing it. So that's kind of the nice thing of having that home inspector, is because it does allow you and your experienced eyes to give that opinion to say, hey, this isn't normal. This isn't a normal situation.
Right,
so
exactly.
All right, so we've finished up a bedroom. We're working counterclockwise. So
to the right.
Yeah. We walk into the kitchen. Walk me through maybe inspecting the kitchen. What are you looking for in the kitchen?
If I haven't turned on the oven when I came in with the dishwasher, I usually don't, but sometimes I will, depending on just the house situation. I will usually first thing I'll turn on the oven, the range or whatever, and let it start heating up. I will inspect the disposal, make sure it's operating properly. And of course, with the disposal comes the water supply and drainage. While it's operating, I'll look under the sink, see if there's any previous damage, wood rot, just some water staining. Make sure that there's no indication of water intrusion down there, and look, nothing going on. Let the disposal operate a little bit, and see if it's. Sometimes I can detect a little crack in the body of it, so water is oozing or seeping out the side, and I will check all the appliances, which includes the dishwasher. As I said, I start the dishwasher first thing when I first can. The dishwasher, disposal, the range or built-in oven, or a built-in standalone cooktop, microwave.
So when you inspect the oven or cooktop, you're checking all the burners, whether they're gas, electric. You're turning all of them on, making sure they all fire up and heat up properly.
Right. I turn on all the burners. Operate the oven in the oven and the broil mode, the vent. And I'll inspect the refrigerator. Refrigerators are not included in the scope of the inspection because normally the seller takes the refrigerator with them.
Yeah.
And so, but then again, sometimes it's left. So I do a quick check of it. I don't even ask anymore if it stays or goes. It takes me 10 seconds to check the temperatures to make sure that it's getting cold, and that's really about all I inspect on the refrigerators. Just make sure it's getting cold. But all the kitchen appliances in the older houses around the 70s, some of them had a trash compactor. I'll operate. You don't see that very often, but I'll operate a trash compactor.
If you see them, most generally they don't work anymore, do they?
Not very often. About 50-50. So
no, that's more than I would have guessed. I would have thought a 20% work.
Yeah, about 50-50. That's just a rough guess.
Okay, so we've left the kitchen. We've hit another bedroom. We've discussed that. All of a sudden, we walk into a bathroom. What are we looking? Because that seems to be where water damage would be found the most.
I'm trying to think of a good percentage, but a crawl space. I don't know of any home inspector that's like, all right, yay, a crawl space, yay. I don't know anybody that does that, but it is so important for me to be able to get into a crawl space because at least 70, probably I'm pulling a number out of the air, probably 75% of the bathrooms have floor damage around the toilet that's visible in the crawl space area. So yes, I can kind of check for the softness of the floor. Usually I can't detect that till I'm under the house. But water leaks under the sink. I want to make sure that the toilet is secure. That's the indicator, especially on where there's a crawl space, because the floor is going to be wood. If the toilet's not secure, that could indicate some possible wood rot around that toilet.
So then you're probably turning on water, hot water, cold water, checking temperatures of water. Do you check those? Or
yes, I do check temperatures. I do. Usually I turn on the bathtub, let it start flowing, and I'll let it flow for a long time. That helps me detect maybe a clogged sewer line. I'm running a lot of water through the house, and with the water from the dishwasher, the sink, and all that. usually helps me detect a blocked sewer line. We don't do the interior inspection of a sewer line, but this helps me see if there's a blockage. But yes, I'll run water, and I do check the temperature of the water heater, of the hot water. 120 is the recommended number.
Good to know.
I've caught some as high as 145 degrees, and that's
scalding.
That's scalding. I have a chart. I don't know the exact number of seconds, but I have a chart that this temperature can result in scalding, second or third degree burns in this amount of time, and it's kind of eye opening when you see that how quick it can happen.
Yeah, and you don't really think about it as an adult. It's like, well, I'm going to turn it down or off. But if a child goes in there and you put them in the bathtub and we've all done it, walk off or go get a towel or something, and the next thing you know, they turn that on and come back, and you've got a child that's burnt. So.
Yeah, and it's ironically you say something about a child. Actually, Larry, that's how I do a lot of my inspections. I think a lot of it is like, okay, now what would I have done if I was a 10-year-old boy and I saw this wire here? Joe, when he was 10 years old, I would have touched that wire with a screwdriver or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of the safety issues that I discover or have to process, I put myself in the place of a 10, 12-year-old child, especially a little boy. I'd do that. I'd stick a screwdriver.
Yeah, curiosity.
Curiosity, yes. So
For sure.
That's helped me so much by just having that mindset.
Okay. All right. So we've checked all of the bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchens. I guess we're going to the furnace. We're going to go look at the furnace then, or
we can.
Depending on where it's at in our counterclockwise, I understand. So what are we looking at?
Older house, so it's in the hall. So
there you go. Yeah, we walked past it and we came back around.
There we go. We found the heater.
Yep.
The furnace. Several things with the furnace. Of course, with the gas line, want to make sure it has a shutoff and a sediment trap.
Before we go any further, let's talk about sediment trap.
Okay.
That is a standard or a code, correct? So any new installation has to have that.
Yes. Actually, sediment traps have been around for a long time.
Okay.
It's not uncommon for them not to be there.
I feel like I've seen, I don't want to say a bunch, but numerous that have not had them. Yeah, and it gets called out in an inspection report, and then it's kind of one of those things that both parties go, it ain't a big deal, and we move on.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of the sediment trap?
Sediment traps are installed on gas appliances. The gas comes in, we'll just say, horizontally. You need a drop of I don't know what the standards are, but 2 or 3, 6 inches of another piece of pipe. The gas, while it's traveling to the appliance, specifically the furnace, that's what we're talking about. Gas is a very low pressure. It comes in very low pressure, so it's not like it's blasting. So it's traveling. If there's any dirt or debris, the debris will fall down in that little piece of pipe.
Okay. So it's trying to help them to protect the longevity of whatever appliance is there and getting clogged up, and that sediment or that particle that's in the line gets into there, and the next thing you know, an orifice is clogged and not correctly burning. So
exactly, and gas being like a fairly low pressure, it's not necessarily going to blow it out like you would think. It's going to clog some type of burner, jet, your pilot, or your niter or whatever. And so yes, that's the theory behind that. Yes.
And then I know another thing that gets called out a lot on inspections is piping going through the wall of the furnace. So sometimes you'll see a flex hose that's outside the furnace and goes through like a hole in the side of the where it connects.
Yes.
I'm not trying to. I don't have the correct terminology of what I'm trying to explain, but
I understand what you're talking about.
That has to be hard piped as well, correct?
Yes. There's most furnaces. There's a hole cut in the casing, the outside case, for the gas supply, and I see it occasionally where it's very noticeable. They're ever so popular yellow flex line. They put it through the unit. That pipe is supposed to be the hard piping is supposed to come from the inside out through that hole, and the flex line connects outside of the unit to that gas piping. Okay. The theory behind that is a flex line is not going to be as thick and sturdy as the hard pipe. And we don't see it, but vibration, that flex line rubbing against the side, your unit is going to, while it's operating, just slow vibrations. And there again, the thought process behind it is that vibration over time could wear a hole through that thin flex line. Flex lines are allowed, but just it has to be installed properly.
And they're kind of like humans. As we get older, things sag, right?
Yes.
So over time, that flex line is going to sag and set on the outside of that, or the underside of that casing.
Right.
And then you've got a squirrel cage in there running and blowing the heated air or the cooled air throughout the system, and that's going to eventually rub a hole.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, the hard pipe doesn't sag near as much.
Not as much. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we've checked that. When you do that, you're checking temperatures at the furnace, or you're checking them at the registers?
Usually, I just check the temperatures at the register. I make sure that we have good clean burning. If there's yellow flickering, that means the air mixture's not right. But just make sure that we've got a good flame, and the fan kicks off and on at proper times. I also check for something is referred to as combustion air ventilation. It's looks like a piece of ducting, a dryer vent, two separate pipes that allow for air circulation within that closet, as opposed to taking oxygen from the living area. And it also allows for, if there's a carbon monoxide leak in there, it also allows for that to expel into the attic. Yes.
Okay. All right. So what else is left in the house? Have I left anything out? You're going to go into the attic, I guess, at some point?
Let's see. Let's go into the
utility room?
Utility room. Yes, if the house is vacant, I will operate the washing machine valves. I carry I think I went to Home Depot or Lowe's or somewhere and bought a washing machine hose. I'll actually operate the washing machine valves. I'll put it down into the drain, make sure that drain's not clogged. It's happened a couple of times where the drain was clogged. Yeah. It was I hated that happened, but I'm glad that I was able to find it for the buyers. Make sure those valves operate properly and aren't leaking. Not a whole lot in the utility room. Make sure that the dryer vent's clear. If there's an unused gas line, make sure it's capped.
So you're checking. We talked about being in bedrooms, checking receps. Are you checking 220 recep? There's no dryer there. Are you checking that 220 recep to see that it's properly powered and everything as well?
I've never inspected a washer or dryer. 99.9% of the time, they go with the buyer. And even if they'd stay, a lot of times there's a load of laundry in there, and I'm not going to operate it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of good to know, actually, because like you said, if the washing machine was there, there's not a cycle ran through it. If there is a clogging issue, that's not going to be found. So the nice thing is when it doesn't have one, it's actually better because you're going to check it at that point for them. Right. So if a washer and dryer doesn't stay, I might tell my buyer and be like, hey, we need to tell the seller to move the washer and dryer so Joe can check out the connections for us.
But yes, I do. If there's not a dryer there, I do have a separate, it's just a contact tester that shows me that I've got 220 power to that recep. Yes. Okay.
All right. I'm sorry. Where were you going? I went to utility room. We were kind of working through the house.
Garage. A lot of times the water heater's there or the furnace is there. Newer homes, the electric panel is going to be there. Garage door opener.
I've seen the handy dandy Joe block. It's not called the Joe block. It's called something.
Actually, I've lost that. I've misplaced it.
You've left it at a house is what's happened. Somebody just inherited that.
I don't know.
And by the way, I would pay good money for that if somebody has that and would return that to me.
You talking about the one I bought from Acme?
Yeah.
Yeah, my Acme garage door tester. Some people think it's a 4x4 post, but it's definitely, I paid good money to buy that from Acme. Now I just have a 2x4 that I just stand on edge to test the garage door opener.
And at that point, you're just verifying that a garage door opener will not crush a child or a pet or
right.
An item, that because they're designed that once they get a certain amount of resistance, then they just go back up.
That is correct. Garage door, the safety switch on a garage door is designed really with a child or infant in mind, because if something happens, they fall, trip, and the door's coming down, we want that door to go back up.
Yeah.
To make sure that it does not crush them, because some of them are 3/4 horsepower, half horsepower motor. It could a lightweight child. It could.
Well, and some of them doors, there's like a double garage will have one door, so that thing is 16 foot wide or so and 9 foot tall and pretty heavy on its own, and so you already have the garage door openers pressure. So
yes, I'll make sure that they return when there's pressure met, and then also that the sensor beam is when it's blocked.
Yeah, the sensor beam, that could be the demise of my existence, because the ones at my house, for whatever reason, I keep hitting them, and then I have to go down there and adjust them, because then now you got to hold the door, the button for it to go down. And
I catch sellers occasionally, they will mount them up above the door opener, just real close to each other to, that's I understand that, but let's protect our kids.
Well, and that's kind of, I totally get why they do it as well. I mean, the convenience of it, don't have to mess with it. But again, having 3 young grandchildren, I'm like, no, I need it to work, even though it's a pain in my rear end to go down there and have to keep adjusting those, because the kids are the ones hitting them with the toy, and they roll in a power wheel, and they knock the little sensor off, and I'm adjusting it or whatever. But I want to leave it there and make sure it's working correctly. So, all right, attic. We're in the garage. We're probably going to have an attic crawl space. How much attic?
Let's go back to the water heater. We didn't get the water heater.
Okay.
I inspect the water heater.
I don't want to talk about the water heater because you're going to want to replace it every time. Because them things are always out of date. Like, it's 10 years old. It's at the end of its life.
Yeah. Water heaters, there's so many issues with water heaters. Proper ventilation, the combustion air ventilation, the gas line, just like the furnace, it needs the sediment trap on it. A catch pan. Not only a catch pan, but a properly installed, properly plumbed catch pan. Mm-hmm. I see so many where there's a catch pan and there's a hole in the catch pan to allow plumbing.
With PVC fitting in it.
Yes. But that's been removed. There's just a hole inside the catch pan, and I'm thinking, and I've got to a point where in my report I have language that all I do is click. I'll say the catch pan is not plumbed to a proper drain. I said this makes this totally useless, and that's because it just irritates me. You got a catch pan, but it's not plumbed right. Water is our friend, but water is also our enemy. If that thing leaks, it's gonna cause damage, no matter where it is. So, if some houses were built where there's not a drain, before floor drains were put in, I understand that, but cap it off and put a moisture detector. At least do that, but have a properly plumbed. I'm sorry, I chase rabbits because that was that's just a pet peeve of mine.
Well, it is, and you're right. There's so many that don't even have a pan.
Right.
I mean, how many times do we go in those and those get called out? And I'm always thinking in the back of my mind when I walk in for an inspection, and if I haven't already done it, which most generally I've already seen it, but I'm like, I already know that's going to hit the report, and I know it's.
Sometimes they'll try to hide that hole in the back of it, but I've got mirrors and cameras and lights. I can usually save.
Even if it doesn't have a hole or it's plugged, it's just going to run over it. The water tank's bigger than the pan.
Oh yeah,
It's going to. I mean, if it's not plumbed to get that water out of the way, you're going to have an issue, and you're going to have a flood in your house if you have a malfunction.
That's where that little alarm. it's not the best in the world, but if there's not a drain, that's the next best thing.
Yep.
But, like I say, leaks, expansion tank. There's just so many things with issues with the water heater and not all of them, brings on the end of the world. Most of them can easily addressed. Just minor issues that I have to report because water heaters are a safety concern. So, and my story I was going to tell you, several years ago, a fellow inspector, he texted me and said, "Man, I wish I had $1 for every water heater I had to write up." And that was in December. So I started something. In January, I started putting $1, have a little zipper bag, and I put $1 in it and put it in my gun safe. I did that a couple times. So this past year, I said, and I got away from it. This year, I said I'm going to do it again. So this time, I upped the ante. I have a little zipper bag and keep it in my gun safe. For every water heater, I'm going to put in a $5 bill. I'm up over $600.
Wow.
And it's middle of September. So there's just always something with the water heater. So I have to pay really close attention. Let's say it's a safety concern.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you'll also run into, we talked about a lot on the gas there, but the electric side of it, you'll have wires that are hardwired in without the proper electrical connection that protects, kind of like the gas flex line rubbing. If you don't protect that electric line running into that hole in the top of that heater, it's going to rub and it's going to short out and cause potentially a fire.
It could pull out or cause stress on it if somebody bumps the wire. I see they'll run the wires out, connecting them right up there and just wide open, like at least tape it. That's not right either, but they should be secured inside of a junction.
Well, so is code now, do they have to have a plug? Because there has to be and maybe I'm making this up, but I thought there was a code that there has to be a disconnect on the electric at a water heater, even if it's just unplugging it.
I'm not familiar with code. Home inspectors, we're not code inspectors. Okay. Although a lot that we do is runs parallel with code. So I've seen some plug-in water heaters, but I've also seen the hardwired ones. So I'm really not for sure. It could be depending on the manufacturer.
And that's kind of where the realtor, when you get done inspecting it, we take the report, and I don't want to get to the end until we're done with our walkthrough here, but it's like explaining to that potential buyer that, hey, this isn't a code issue, or yes, code is this, but these are grandfathered in, or it's not a safety hazard. It's just the code has changed in the last 20 years since this water heater was installed, or whatever it may be. So sometimes we have the luxuries of trying to figure out what is code, and luckily most realtors that have been in the business have electricians and plumbers and friends and acquaintances and subcontractors that they can call and say, hey, I'm having this issue, this came up on an inspection. What's code? First of all, is this acceptable? And second of all, what's the cost to fix this or replace it? So, and the water heaters are always one that seems to be the one that's like, okay, we need to replace it, or hey, we need to add a pan underneath it and a drain valve, or the pop-off valve. Sometimes, do you check those?
I do not operate them.
Because if you check one of those, you're liable to be replacing it at that point. Because how many of them do you pop off and then it never wants to close?
Right, it doesn't want to close properly. It's there, and but no, we do. I know some inspectors have done it, but to me, that's a little bit beyond the scope. Plus, I just because I can pop that spring doesn't necessarily mean it's going to release. When the temperature TNP, temperature and pressure. Just because I lift that spring up, that little latch, doesn't guarantee that it's going to release.
Well, and if there's sediment in that, then guess what gets caught in that spring and doesn't let it contract back. And
so Joe, the home inspector, just flooded the garage.
Yeah, he's calling the agent that's sitting in the car still working, going, hey, we got an issue in here, and who's calling the listing agent, who's calling the seller. And hopefully Joe's already found the water meter and he knows where to turn it off. So
let's hope so.
So last night my son and I were talking about circulating water heater. Do you see that very often, where the hot water continuously has a pump on the end of it, and they put those down at the drain, I think, and then it's like an instant hot water.
Right.
If your master's at the other end of the house, you go turn the hot water on, it runs little bits in the service line, and then boom, you've got hot water instead of waiting 20 minutes.
I see them occasionally, not very often. Actually, it would be nice to have one on my house, because my water heater and my shower is on opposite ends of the world.
Hey, we talked about it for a reason, because I told him, I was like, I think if I ever built another one, I'm going to do something like that. I did a remodel and added it, and then was minimal cost to add the recirculation in this remodeled house. His thought was like, well, what does that do to my utility bill? Because my water heater is technically always going to be running, heating up that water, because it's constantly running out and coming back to the tank, and it loses temperature value as it's going out. And so I didn't know the answer to that. I was like, I don't know, but I know it would be nice to not have to turn my shower on and wait 10 minutes. So.
I think it's just deciding on what you want. Do you want to pay a little extra to have instant water? It's a give and take.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it just depends on what you want. But it's the the thought process is it circulates the water through the water heater, the hot water lines, and you turn on your shower and you've got
Yeah, so you're
water.
not seeing a lot of that in newer constructions that you do?
Not a lot.
Because you'll do home inspections on old homes, but you also do them on brand new.
Yes.
And it's amazing, a brand new home, and as someone who's built brand new home, there's still things missed. The builder's going to miss some things. His subcontractors are going to miss some things. And so it's always eye-opening to be like, this is a brand new home, but this plug-in doesn't work.
Right. Homes are built by people. People make mistakes.
That's right.
And, and I'll be careful saying this, but sometimes you get a poor quality person comes through, and and you need somebody there to make sure that what you're buying is going to be quality work.
Yep.
Someone may have had a bad day, and just something happened and missed something, and something didn't get connected or nailed right or whatever. So yes, I don't advertise new construction, but when people ask me, I recommend it. Yes, because things can happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And I have found some, fairly important things. I found some fairly, not very often, but usually with each house, there's usually at least one or two minor things. But I have found some significant deficiencies or issues, even in new construction.
Well, all right, Joe. So we talked about water heaters, sediments, electric, gas. What about tankless? You see very many tankless?
I'm seeing more and more, mainly because at first, the initial setup, they're fairly expensive. I don't know a cost, but I know they're fairly expensive. But they don't operate until you want them to. They don't, like mine at home right now. It's keeping my water hot while I'm gone. Even if we go on vacation, I forget to turn it down. They're operating constantly, keeping that water hot. Your tankless is only going to create hot water when you need it. You turn it on, the burners kick on. And I was actually at an inspection one time where the cover was off. I got to see one of them operate. I mean, it's pretty impressive. Turn on the hot water and the whole panel just not explodes, but just goes on fire, just heating the water as it travels through the.
So that was gas?
It was a gas, yes.
So I have a good friend that's a plumber, and one of the things that has stuck with me through the years is in discussions with him about tankless, he was like, I don't recommend it on electric because it takes so much of electric load. Because like you just said, that panel heats up with a bunch of fire basically to warm that water instantly. Well, you've got to do that with electric now. So there's all these electrodes or whatever it is that's heating it up, and it takes so much power. He's like, he doesn't recommend it on an electric-only service. He said, now, if you have natural gas, propane's kind of in the middle. Yeah, it's going to use more propane than maybe you want to use, but natural gas, for sure. He's like, great way to go if you got natural gas service to do tankless. So
it takes up a lot less space. And like I say, it's instant. But I haven't heard good, nothing bad, but I have to agree with you. The electric, when it kicks on, I envision Christmas Vacation when he turned on his Christmas lights.
The rest of the house,
the whole city shuts down. I don't think, given the choice, I don't think I would go.
And I have one. So we bought a house. It's one of our Verbo houses, and it had a tankless electric already in it. Of course, people came and stayed in it after we got done. It quit working, so I went out and bought another one because it was just easier to replace it. Ended up being a bigger deal because we had to run new wires because the size of the wire wasn't properly, so we just ran all new wires from the breaker panel, put in the new one. It only runs bathrooms, the kitchen, the utility room, they all run off a tanked water heater.
Right.
So it seems to be okay. I've not stayed in the house personally, but I've not had any complaints from any of the people that stayed in it as to it doesn't get hot enough. And it has a dial. You can turn it up or down just like you can a normal water heater on the temperature of it. So
they'll probably be okay if, unless it's a high volume need. But
So, all right, attic. Can we get to the attic yet?
Yes, we can.
All right, let's climb up the ladder. They're fun.
Yes, they are. Attics, there's several different things to look in the attic. Sometimes your furnace is in the attic. If that's the case, I'll do my best to get to the attic. Attics, sometimes they're built very weird, and I've got to climb over, which I don't do. To get there, I'd have to climb over bracing and unprotected ceiling joists. I don't walk on I don't step on ceiling joists.
Yep.
Just the liability and safety issue. If I can get to the heater, I'll inspect it, or in the furnace, air handler, make sure it's vented properly, operating properly, proper drainage, condensation drainage, so forth, the whole schmeal. I want to make sure there's adequate insulation. And this, it kind of blows my mind. Even after the energy crisis many years ago, I still go in the attics where there's 3, 4, 5 inches of insulation, and that is costing them so much money every year. But I check for insulation, structural issues. I'll see rafters that are split occasionally. Water damage around we talked about this on the roof. Now I'm on the underside of the roof. I look for water damage at the vent flashings. That's water intrusion is a high part of my inspection, and so I look for damage, on the roof decking, water staining on the rafters as an indication of leaking somewhere. Just a lot of proper wire connections. A lot of times the electricity runs through the attic. Make sure they're properly connected.
Open J boxes or whatever with no covers on them.
Yes,
Pretty common.
Pretty common, especially in the older houses where they just,
Added a circuit, came back later and said, hey, this room doesn't have any lights.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of the older homes do we walk, it runs a reset not a light? And so over time, people are like, well, I need some lights. So what do? They go up in the attic and they run some wires, and then they don't properly secure them. And then Joe comes along and says, hey.
I inspect, it was actually my mother-in-law's house. She had a power surge, and one of her receps wasn't working. Well, it had been added on. This recep had been added in later, and I couldn't figure out. I checked every recep, couldn't figure it out. Well, anyway, long story short, it was connected to the furnace breaker, and I didn't realize the furnace breaker had been tripped. So when I tripped it, reset it, Joe's the hero. But it took me an hour to find. Like you said, they go find a wire.
The closest power that's up there.
They cut into it, and by golly, we've got light now.
Yeah,
so.
For sure.
Yeah, and I call that some of it is Cousin Jim Bob. Cousin Jim Bob worked at a home builder's store for 6 months. So by golly, he's an expert on everything. I see Cousin Jim Bob's work quite a bit.
I've heard of Cousin Jim Bob on a few of my inspections, unfortunately.
Yes. Bless his heart.
So insulation. One thing I will say is I've got a boy that bought a house a few years ago. The utility bill the first year he was in it was just outrageous. All summer long, the air conditioner just ran crazy and was expensive. And so I told him, we need to blow in some insulation. Went to Lowe's, bought, I don't remember, 20 bags of it wasn't the fiberglass, it was the paper,
like a cellulose type?
Yes, kind of like a paper cellulose.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they'll rent you the machine free if you buy enough bags. And so anyway, we go to his house and we do that, and the next month comes along and he calls me. He's like, something ain't right on my utility bill. He's like, this thing is like a third of what it was running. And I was like, no, that's what insulation will do for you when you have enough in your attic. And we way overdid it. Lord help us if we ever have to call through this boy's attic, because we're going to be wading through it, because we caked it in there, or piled it in there, I should say. But it's a major difference. And I'm going to say $1,000, $1,200, probably $800 that we spent on that insulation. But I bet within 2 years his utility bill will pay that.
Yeah, that's the thing about it, proper insulation. It'll pay for itself over time.
Yep.
And then once it's paid off, it's just
money saved at that point. Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, so we've climbed up there. So when you talked about the furnace in the attic, side note for me is I recently built a new home, 2022, I believe. First winter, rolling along, and then all of a sudden, we've got no heat. Brand new house, and I'm like, and we moved in October. I was like, man, something ain't right. I don't understand. And it was cold outside. I believe we might have even had some snow on the ground at the time, and could not figure out. So I called the Masters Heat and Air, and I'm like, hey, you guys put this in, and I don't have any heat. So I crawl up in the attic. I'm talking to him on the phone. Steve Masters, great guy, tells me what I need to do. So hang up the phone with Steve. I crawl up in the attic. Of course, I find the moisture sensor that you're talking about sitting in the pan, and it's wet. and there's water in there. And I was like, why is there water in this? Long story short is I did not realize that heat pumps have condensation during the winter. So I have propane backup, and of course it was engaged, and so it needed to drip. Well, when you go outside, the drain line was froze up from the outside.
I have heard of that happening.
And I had no idea that could happen. I was like, well, it's wintertime, AC condensates and it runs out during the summer, and I see my little wet spot by my drain, but
right.
Never even thought anything about it happening in the wintertime when I'm running the heater. And sure enough, that was the issue. So I resolved it. Put a heater outside on my drain line, got it unthawed, and it worked properly. Next winter, it did it again. And I was like, dadgummit. And I already knew what it was, so I went up there. Sure enough, same problem. The drain line had froze. So I kind of got to figure out what I want to do with my drain line outside my house, because whenever it's super cold and there's any kind of snow, or, if that thing's dripping, if it's 15 degrees, 20 degrees outside, it just starts building a big old icicle there till it plugs itself up. And so that was just something. And when you said the heater or the furnace in the attic, it made me think of mine, and then the wet switch.
And that switch it's did what it's designed to do.
Yes.
Years ago, when my daughter was pregnant, she'd come stay with us. When her husband worked at the fire station, she'd come stay with us on the night he was gone, because in case she had to go to the hospital. Dad, can I come stay with you? Yeah, let me go turn the air conditioner on upstairs. Went upstairs and it didn't turn on. I'm like, oh, great. Anyway, long story short, my condensation line was clogged up, had a drain pan full of condensation, and shut down the system. This can prevent overflowing and damaging your ceiling.
That's exactly what it's designed to do. If that switch isn't in there, if that furnace is in the attic, and the air handler and everything, you're going to probably find out when the sheetrock starts.
Yeah, and
the house I had before, that's exactly what happened. Yeah. Was it started coming through, and all of a sudden in the garage there was a bubble, and I was like, what is this bubble? And it's full of water, and then realized that, our drain isn't going outside, it's draining into the ceiling of the garage.
Right. Occasionally I'll see some staining, and it's in a perfect square. I'm like, So I go up in the attic, and they've had a previous leak, or they didn't have an alarm on it or whatever. Just that little module there it works wonders. So yes,
it's crazy. So all right, so anything else from the inspecting of that house that we need to look at or talk about? That I think we've inspected the whole thing.
Did we talk about the electrical?
Well, let's touch on electrical a little bit.
Okay,
breaker panel.
Okay.
Biggest thing you find: pointy screws in the breaker panel cover, right?
Yes, and I found them out the hard way a couple of times.
And the second thing you find is double tap breakers.
Double tap breakers, yes.
So double tap breaker is basically, I'll let you explain what that is.
A double tap breaker is, each breaker is designed for one circuit, one wire. And sometimes cousin Jim Bob, he will twist wires together and stick two under one screw. That's going to do two things. It's going to put an excessive load on that breaker, could cause it to trip unnecessarily. But that set screw is designed to compress one wire. And if one of them isn't touching, if it's not making good connection, when electrical wires don't have good connection, they generate heat. So that heat will build up, and eventually catch on fire, cause a fire, or some issue. Yes. Yeah. So there's one breaker that's designed. I've heard it's designed for. I haven't got any proof yet, but they say, oh yeah, you can do a double tap with this particular brand. No, it's double tap.
Which is odd, because they make breakers that are the width of a single one that you would see, but they're two breakers. I don't know.
They're called. My mind just went blank.
I know. I was thinking of what it's called too, because I have.
It'll come to me this afternoon. But yes, it's just, and only so many of those are allowed in the panel. You can only put so many of that type of breaker. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
Because that's always my thing. Whenever the home inspection is done, and I see the double tap breaker hit and I'm like, well, look, it's as simple as buying a breaker. It splits it into two. But now you have 220 amp on that.
Right. I'll text it to you when I remember it this afternoon.
I've been told that the top priority inspections carries these blunt screws at no cost.
That is correct. Wow. Actually, I do it for a safety issue and just for marketing. I go down to Home Depot, buy them 10 packages at a time. You get a discount when you buy 10 or more. Come in packages of 6. And whenever I remove screws, and the reason they're supposed to be blunt tipped, you're not supposed to put a pointed tip screw through the dead panel, of the dead front of an electric panel. Because this does happen. It has happened. That pointed screw could drill into the main circuit or any circuits in that box. And that you just energize that screw, which energizes that panel. Somebody touches it,
Yep, electrocution.
There you go. So you do not put pointed screws in electric panel, the dead front of electric panel. As a licensed contractor, if I pull out a screw and it's pointed, there's a lot of liability on me if I put that back. If I put that pointed screw back in, there's a lot of liability on me. So I keep a stock of these blunt screws, and I may or may not put a enlarged picture of me holding screws and make a note of it in my report that these were replaced by top priority inspections.
My daughter may or may not have one of those reports. I don't know. I've heard she does.
Yeah.
So
I use it, like I say, for safety. It protects the home buyer. It protects me because I don't put pointed screws back in, and it's a marketing tool. I said, hey, look what Joe did. He replaced these screws.
Yeah. So breaker panels need to be replaced sometimes, right?
That is correct.
Another one of my daughter's inspections revealed.
There's specifically two breaker panels that have issues. One's the Zinsco and one's the Federal Pacific. I know more about the Zinsco because I've done research, and I've actually made a YouTube video concerning the Zinsco panel. When they were built, they were just allowing aluminum to be used in this panel. There's one of the batches of aluminum coming through was not a good batch of aluminum, so it has more of a corrosive tendency as opposed to conductivity. So it generates heat. It doesn't conduct properly. Some of the breakers they will actually melt, and so the breaker can be off as far as you think, but there's not trip. So they can generate heat. Just several issues with that Zinsco panel.
So we'll on our YouTube page, we're going to actually tag that link in this video to make sure that people can get to your YouTube video of that. Because I have watched that YouTube video that you put out for the Zinsco. So we'll be sure to tag that in our YouTube page.
Awesome, so. Thank you. Yes, it's just I recommend it. As a firefighter, I have safety as forefront in my inspections, and especially fire related. So I don't just recommend them to be evaluated. I recommend them to be replaced. Yeah. The studies have shown, research has shown that approximately 25% of them have the potential to be bad. It doesn't mean every one of them is going to be bad. 25% of them have the potential. As a firefighter, I don't like those odds.
Well, I was going to say, and put yourself into, do you want your grandchild or your daughter, your son, yourself, whatever it may be, to be that 25% chance that you're the one?
Right.
I don't want to take that chance, and I don't want none of my family. So we've actually, with my kids and helping them with their houses, we've replaced 2 of them now because of those reasons. I just don't want them to take those chances. I'm like, it's anywhere from, depending on the size of the panels and what all the circuits are, but you're talking $1,000 to $2,500 probably max.
That's a really good range right there. Yeah.
For $1,500, $2,000, it's well worth the money spent. So
it's worth a night's sleep right
there. That's right. So so we did all that. Joe has recorded himself on his voice recorder, all the things he's found, made his notes. He goes back home. What's he do then?
Eat dinner.
Yeah. Well, actually, so let's do back up. We didn't do the crawl space.
Oh, we didn't?
We didn't go under the house. So first of all, Joe has to drive back to the house now, and he's got to crawl under it.
Yeah, crawl space, like I said, I don't know of any inspector that just looks forward to crawl space, but, I'm like, oh, gosh, I am tired, I'm hot, it's 100 degrees, I don't want to go under there, but I suit up, get my mask, my protective gear, gloves, and I go under there, and I'm always so thankful I did. I always go. I don't avoid it. I just don't look forward to it. Most homes with crawl spaces, most of them, they are older. 40s, 50s, some 60s, but occasionally I'll find a newer home that has a crawl space.
Okay. So Now and I will say, and kudos to Joe, I've watched Joe put his booties on when he walks in the houses and make sure he doesn't, and you always save the crawl space for last.
Yes.
Because you're going to get dirty and you know it, and you don't want to go back in their house. So thank you from all of those sellers and buyers through the years of doing that. So very grateful of that, I guess, and very considerate of you to do that. So you crawl out, take all your gear off, get in your truck, tell me bye, you drive home, eat dinner. Usually that night I get the report, most generally. So
usually it depends on my work schedule. I will go home and start working on the report. If I have 2 for that day, I will try to get that first one done that night, and then I'll get started on the next one, and then the next morning, if I didn't get finished, I've actually got it started so I can get up. I usually get up depending on my schedule for the next day. If I have inspections, I'll get up about 5 o'clock and finish the report. And that's actually what I did this morning for Dustin's report. I got it started and then got up this morning and fed my dogs, drank my coffee, and finished his report. So
okay. So you send the report to the buyer and the real estate agent, correct?
Yes, I get permission from the buyer. The report belongs to the buyer.
Okay.
And in my agreement that I have them sign, it gives me permission to send it to the realtor, because the realtor needs it to help them walk them through their TRR.
Okay. Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going to go. So I get a copy of it, and then first thing I do is I open it and go through it. Your report's pretty clean, I guess is the word to put it. You know, it's easy to find the hazards. Hey, here are hazards that you really need to look at, and then here's some areas of concerns. And I don't know if you label them this, but hazards, areas of concerns, and just kind of some FYIs, if you will. So then, as a realtor, I go through those, and I'm saying, okay, well, here's these hazards. Let's talk about those. And then I'll get on the phone with the buyer and say, hey, have you had time to look at it? And no, I haven't. Okay, well, when you get done, call me. You know, we'll go over it, or come by the office, or meet me for coffee, whatever it may be. Then I'll step the buyer through all of that, and then kind of work through like I said earlier, maybe calling some subcontractors and saying, hey, what is the cost of this? What is the cost of that? And then, you know, we kind of go off into our negotiations of what needs to happen. And Joe rides off into the sunset and goes to his house. And I know what Joe does next. I don't even need to ask him. I already know what it is. He goes and puts his apron on, goes to his back porch.
Oh, that's right.
Fires up the griddle.
That is right.
And starts cooking.
That is
right. So
I
I must admit, I have watched some videos of the smash burgers.
Oh, I love smash burgers.
Yeah, I do too. Love them.
Love them.
I'm in the process of doing an outdoor, I don't want to call it a kitchen because I don't want the expense of all of that, first of all. But I want like some countertop. I want a built-in grill. And then I've been looking at griddles, and I think what I'm going to end up doing is building like a cut-in that I can just take the legs off one, set it in there, permanently attach it, and then if I need to swap that out.
Right.
Particular brand I should be looking at?
You know, I've cooked. The one I have is I have several.
I was going to say, I know you got.
My name is Joe, and I have a problem. I actually. There's a story behind it, but I won't go into the story. It's a outdoor gourmet, and it's huge. And but I have another Blackstone that I keep in my camper, a small one, and I am the unofficial. Well, I don't know. I may be official. I may be the official cook of my granddaughter's softball team. So I bought another one at Tractor Supply. It's a little bit bigger. It's more portable. So I have an outdoor gourmet and 2 Blackstones, and I've owned some others that I've refinished, and to me, I know there's some people that, you know, like Ford and Chevy. There's some people that's diehard Ford.
Yeah.
I can cook a smash burger on any of them. So.
Well, and I have read review after review on them. Traeger has one out now, I guess, and I read some reviews on it, and I can't remember the brand that it was up against in the YouTube video that I had watched, but Blackstone's all I have any experience
everybody
with.
calls them generically Blackstones. Yes.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what I roll with as well, but I didn't know if you had any advice as to, it was, you got to get this one specific one. So you're just saying they're all pretty.
I think, like I say, I've driven Fords, Dodge, Chevy, the whole thing, and I can drive any of them. I can.
As long as you take care of it, right?
If you take care
season
of
it right, clean it right, all that good stuff.
I keep mine on my back porch. It's covered, but it's not enclosed. I do not keep a cover on it, but I have it seasoned good, and I've never had a rust problem. Wow. So you season it good and take care of it, and you're golden. So.
Yeah. So what's your best recipe other than a smash burger?
Everybody loves a filet, and actually, I stopped in Claremore yesterday after I left Dusty's inspection, and bought a couple of fillets. But I got home and got tied up with a meeting, and I didn't get to cook them. Everybody loves a filet, but you go to a steakhouse and you're going to pay, $50 or whatever, so you can't afford that whenever you want. So I've learned to cook a filet so that you can affordably eat them at home. I've learned to do that like the Japanese
like a hibachi grill?
Yes, and I'm not bragging, because when I brag, it hurts when I pat myself on the back.
Yeah.
But
kind of like employee of the year.
Year.
6 years, 7 years running now, however long it's been.
I'm coming up on 7.
Yeah.
So, but I've learned to cook a steak on my griddle that I'll compare to any steakhouse. It's
nice,
and so I love it. And so we may have it tonight when I get home.
Yeah. All right, Joe.
Yes, actually, I'd like to share something with you. Lakeland has a special place in my heart. We go way back. When I was first starting out, just like a realtor, I'm pounding the pavement, driving all over the place, sending emails, letters, trying to drum up business for to get inspections. And the very first realtor that ever called me was Miss Carol Woolard, special, precious lady from Lakeland. And she called me and booked an inspection. Actually, I was driving down the road. I said, "Yeah, let me look at my calendar." "No, Joe, you pull over. Don't you call me while you're driving." "Yes, yes, Miss Carol." So I pulled over, called her back, and booked an inspection. So I was hoping you would ask me about that or give me the opportunity. My first inspection, I did a couple for some friends, but my first realtor to call me was Miss Carol, Jennifer. March 19th of 2015 was my first inspection. That was with a realtor, and it was
wow.
Miss Carol. And then Miss Carol introduced me to Miss Donna. And so
Miss Donna's who I bought Lakeland from.
Right.
So was former owner here.
April 8th of 2015 was when I met Donna, did inspection, and I've done a lot of inspections for her. And that has allowed me to meet a lot of agents in the Pryor, Salina area. And so I've done a lot of work in this area just because Miss Carol got me started and introduced me, met a lot of people. And so I like I say, and I've met almost all of the agents here. They're all so good to me, so nice to me. They're real people. They welcome me, like a family. So like I say, the history goes way back, and I'm very careful about sharing this number here. And once I tell you why, you'll understand. I've performed 2,272 inspections.
How many?
2,272.
Wow.
And out of those, the realtor that I've done more inspections for their buyers is Kim Kennan.
I am so sorry.
Well,
oh my gosh. No wonder your hair's gray.
I know. I
thought it was just an age thing. I was getting gray, but we both have Kim in common, so I know now why we have gray hair.
I've done 88 inspections for Kim's buyers.
88?
I did the math. That is almost 4% of my inspections have been for Kim's buyers. That's
awesome.
1 out of every 25, so almost 4%. So, I'm thankful for Kim. I enjoy working with her. Of course, she introduced me to Kevin, so I work with Kevin. But, I really, people that know Kim, I think they need to realize the personality that I have to be able to handle that. I really think a gold star or a T-shirt or something is I need something. You
need more than that. I mean, you like a statue or something because that lady
what can I say,
is so awesome. I mean, yes, she's great. No,
I love Kim.
We like to poke fun with Kim all the time.
She takes it and she dishes it.
I was going to say she is one that will dish it right back to you. So for sure.
I do want to thank Lakeland and all the people here. And
we appreciate that. We do for sure. We like to partner with the people who are going to take care of the client. At the end of the day, we're trying to make sure that the buyer gets what they think they're getting. I mean, we're not trying to pull anything over on anyone. We're not trying to, be shady is not a good terminology, but we want to make sure that, hey, this is the house this buyer wants. And I've told many buyers, especially when I got into business and started out, I'm like, look, when you walk in a house if you love it. You're just like, I love this house. My job is to show you the pimples and the scars and the bad things about this house, and then make sure that you're aware that, okay, it looks beautiful, but here's a few things to keep in mind. And then if you still like it after those, then that's great. It's a win-win.
Yes.
It's awesome. If I reveal something or a home inspector reveals something that you say, okay, well, maybe I don't like it quite as much as I did before, that was the goal, is to make sure that you're aware of what you're buying. So it's a large purchase. For most of us, it's the largest purchase we're ever going to make, is buying our house. Well, Joe, we appreciate your time. I really do. It's always fun whenever I call you for an inspection or we meet up at an event. You know, we can sit and talk for hours and hours and get nothing accomplished. So I have to be careful when I have an inspection with you. I have to go get in the truck. I'm like, leave Joe alone. But we appreciate you coming out. Appreciate the business, the support you've given us.
Well, thank you so much.
We're going to continue to provide good service to clients. So that's going to wrap up our pod. Appreciate everybody that's liked, subscribe, follow us. Joe's contact info will be added to this at the end as well. So if you want to call Joe directly, you're more than welcome to do that. And until next time, see ya.
Thank you.